Hello, folks. Officer Tony here. Today, Ricky is gonna teach you all about those guitar tuner knob thingies. It's very educational. You're gonna learn something. Just watch.
Hello, Richard from budgetguitarist.com, and today I'm going to deal blackjack. No, I'm going to teach you about tuning machine knob peg tuners. I don't know what to call them because everybody calls them something different, but we're going to delve into a presentation today and we're going to learn all about them. So let's go. Okay, let's get started. Guitar tuning machine heads, what do you call those little knobs at the top of the guitar? You know, they're in the headstock and you turn them to raise or lower the pitch of a string. Well, they're called machine heads, guitar tuners, tuning machines, tuning gear, tuning peg. If I just say tuner, then you know what I'm talking about. One of those things. So, here's what we're going to cover. Construction, weight, open versus closed back. Manufacturer, ratio design, staggered post, locking versus non-locking, and adjustments. Onward. So way back in the 60s, maybe the early 70s, there were a whole lot of cheap tuners out there where the tuner would actually slowly give up ground as you kind of played the instrument. That really hasn't been an issue in a long time. On most modern guitars, even the cheap ones, the tuners are usually good enough to not slip. But, you know, long term, you're probably more likely to have tuning issues with cheaper tuners. But if a guitar has tuning issues, it's probably the nut, not the tuners. Just something to think about. In terms of weight, some tuners weigh more than others, and some people care about that. If your headstock is too heavy or too light, it can cause your guitar to shift while you have it strapped on. Some people argue that a heavier, more solid tuning machine can help increase sustain. Is this true? Kinda, sorta, maybe? In theory, a tuner that transfers more string vibration to the body could lead to increased sustain, but can you actually hear the difference? It depends. I feel like when I upgraded the tuners on my Strat, it might have given me slightly more sustain, but I'm willing to admit it might have been psychological. I think the jury's out on this one. Okay, so open versus closed back. The vast majority of tuners these days are closed back. And the advantage is it keeps out like the dust and other stuff like that. But some really expensive guitars, including PRS, have open back tuners. Are open back tuners more likely to get gunked up or gummed up? A lot of people say no. So the picture on the left there, that's a mandolin. And then, of course, on the right, those are sealed tuners. So what do you think? Does it look cool? Are you worried about dust? I have had open tuners on an electric guitar before. I didn't have any issues, but something just tells me it's better for them to be sealed. But again, this is like really subjective stuff. So Gibson, PRS, Fender, Jackson, a lot of companies have their own branded tuners. Sometimes they make them themselves, sometimes they subcontract. In addition to that, there's Grover, there's Ping, there's Kluson, and a whole bunch of other big names. So in general, if you recognize the name on the tuner and it's a modern guitar, you're probably fine. People often replace cheap tuners quickly, but check the ratio, which we're going to talk about next. The ratio is almost more important than the name on the back of the tuner. Okay, so ratio. A tuner with at least a 14:1 ratio or better is usually preferable. Personally, I like 18:1. The first number in the ratio refers to the number of times you must complete a full rotation of a key to cause the tuner to complete one full rotation. So the higher the ratio, the more you can fine-tune the pitch. You ever had a tuning key where you're trying to tune a string and you're adjusting it and you keep overshooting or undershooting? Like it's always sharp or flat and it's hard to get it to the exact pitch? that's probably a tuner with a low ratio, and a higher ratio tuner would help with that. So in general, the higher, the better. Design. Not all tuners are alike. Some have taller or shorter posts. Some have wider or skinnier posts. Some require an indent on the back of the headstock. Some use one screw. Some use two screws. And some are all inline. Some are three in a line. Some are individual. Here's what you really need to know. There's really no standard rule other than if you have a guitar and you want to replace the tuners, Google it. Find out exactly what kind of tuners they are. Find out what the measurements are. Find out which replacement tuners will work easily without having to drill new holes. Because you don't want to drill new holes in the back of your headstock if you don't have to. Does that make sense? I think it makes sense. Okay, staggered posts. This is something that I have grown to appreciate. This is a picture of my Fender Strat. I took off the default Fender tuners and I added Fender locking tuners. But in addition to being locking, they are also staggered. So if you notice the high E string, see how that tuner is lower than the low E string? See how the low E string tuner is taller? So as you go down the string lengths, you can see that they get shorter and shorter. And the reason for this is to increase the angle of the string across the nut. And so in theory, that means you don't need string trees. I'm actually still using the string tree on this, as you can see. Why? I don't know. I'm just used to it, I guess. But I probably don't need to. So in theory, staggered posts are a real benefit. They would eliminate the need for string trees, which is another source of friction. And yeah, if you use your vibrato bar a lot, you probably should look into these. Now we get to the main event, locking versus non-locking. So basically what a locking tuner is, you put the string through the hole and then you lock the hole. And so then you can do like one wrap around the post of the string. You don't really need to do too much more than that. And the string will stay attached. You don't have to wrap it 4, 5, 6 times around the post. And I've seen a lot of chatter online about whether this is good or bad, or whether it makes a difference or helps or it doesn't help. And neither is always better or always worse. The correct answer really is it depends. Okay, so I've got 3 different styles of locking tuners on my guitars. I've got the PRS style, I've got the Fender style, and I've got the Grover style. Now the PRS, the picture that you see here, that's an American S2, and it's got plastic caps. So it's real easy to use, but the downside is with the plastic caps, if you over tighten them, it's probably easy to strip them out. And it really would be better if they were metal. I don't know if the American, full American, I should say, PRS guitars use metal. I know these are plastic. So they work great as long as you don't over tighten them. Now the Fenders are my favorites. On the bottom of the headstock, there's like a little dial that you spin, and the dial is made out of metal, so there's less chance of stripping anything out. I really like those. And then the Grovers, well, the Grovers, if you've had locking Grover tuners, they can be a pain in the backside. The hole you have to put the string through is really small, and you have to have everything in the perfect right position. It can be a pain to do, and I mean, if you do it all the time, you probably get fast at it. But I always find them really difficult. So of the 3 styles I have, I like the Fender style the best. Okay, so the concept for a locking tuner really to me is quick string change plus using the vibrato bar, right? So here's a picture of, this is actually a picture of the locking Grover. And I don't know if you can see, but I've got the string wrapped around the post once. There's a lot of dust in that picture. Oh, well, I've got it wrapped around once. That's about all I need. So if I dive bomb this guitar, the string's gonna go slack, and then it's gonna come right back up to pitch. And that's a good thing. Now, conversely, Okay, this is a fictitious example. I would hope nobody would wind a string like this, but it sort of demonstrates how a locking tuner can help you versus non-locking. If you're sloppy with your post wraps, imagine that string going slack, like all the way slack, and then tighten back up. There's a pretty decent chance it's going to tighten in a different position, and it's not going to come back up in tune. Now, does this mean locking is always better than non-locking for vibrato bar use? No. It means that if you have a vibrato bar and you don't have a locking tuner, you just need to be careful about your wraps. You need to wrap your string very carefully, and you don't want it to look like this. Because if it looks like this, what's going to happen when you dive bomb that thing and bring it back up is you're going to be out of tune. Now that's one string. Imagine all 6 strings. You get kind of the idea. So a locking tuner really can help you. But what's the downside? Well, they're more expensive, right? And if you get one like the PRS S2, the plastic can strip. If you get one like the Grovers I have, well, they're a pain in the backside to use. So there's pros and cons. If you don't have a vibrato bar, what's the advantage of a locking tuner? Well, you could argue quick string change, but you know, how big of an issue is that? I don't know. I mean, it's up to you. But the biggest argument for a locking tuner is if you're using a vibrato bar and you wrap your strings terrible like this picture here. In that case, a locking tuner will really help you. I like them. I think they're fast and easy, except the Grover. But I'm not about to put locking tuners on all my guitars. It's just not necessary. And in terms of do they sound better? No, they don't sound better. They sound pretty much just like all the other tuners. Okay. Last but not least, you know that there's a nut that you can adjust to tighten the tuner on your headstock. Everybody knows that. And if you've got a rattle on your guitar, take the strings off and check those nuts, and you're probably going to find that one of them is loose. But what some people don't realize is if you look at the side of your tuning key, in almost every case there's going to be a little screw there. And if you really crank that thing, it's going to be harder to turn the tuning key. And if you loosen it up a little bit, it's going to make it easier to turn the tuning key. That's a pretty good tip. Not everybody knows about that. Longtime guitar players will be laughing. What do you mean not everybody knows about that? Trust me, there are plenty of people who do not know about that.
So there you go. That was maybe more than you ever wanted to know about tuning machines, but if you want to get into taking care of your own instruments and working on guitars, it's good to understand all this stuff. Even if you don't care about it, you might find it mildly interesting. If you didn't, you probably didn't watch this far into the video. So for those who did watch, thank you very much. And I will see you again next Friday at 5.